How can you walk upright when your pants falling and you sipping on lean? Ain't even go a day without Mary. Stuck in a web of dejection. Billboard stars twisting your conscience up like a wind-up toy. Got your daily problems all bottled, but you try to cap it with a pill. Reveling views for the thrill, an escape to remove from the real. Is it really cause you in peril, or is it mimic Hollywood? Sip after sip, snip after snip, you're killing yourself, can't see it's draining your soul and taking a toll. Don't take it from me, tell him JB.
My spirit was dead, clouded with haze. I was chasing a high, labyrinth mind, numbing the pain. Stuck in a cycle, I wish I had closed. I look at my wounds, open as torture, but it's too soon. Another excuse, I was addicted. Capital E, evicted out my own body, had no control, passenger seat. I was out for a ride and I noticed that the ride won't end. Had to jump out that car, took a leap of faith. To attach had me crash, got up leaning, and I got out scarred. Most I saved my life, he cut them demons down. He healed me all around. So I'ma tell you right now, this world ain't worth it, no. Those drugs ain't worth it, no. Don't lose your purpose, whoa. Yes, I'm talking to you, children. Listen to your parents now while you have them. Especially hold fast to their words when they talking about Messiah. Consider this a warning now.
All right. Peace and greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world. You're now tuned in to the live broadcast of the Network of Awareness, broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook. What's the other one? I forgot. Twitter, the one that I don't pay attention to much. And then, of course, we're broadcasting via audio on Spreaker.com. And then after this broadcast is over, you'll be able to download this show from anywhere podcasts are played. So, with that being said, it's been a minute. You know, this is another bonus episode before we start season 6. And this is another Truth Seeker series. This is End Generational Trauma to Protect Our Kids. And I kind of, consolidated that title for the purposes of keeping it short and concise, because sometimes when you put a long title, it's not good for a podcast as far as it drawing attention for people to view it. So I wanted to keep it as concise as possible. But on today's show, I'm going to play a actual interview that I did not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, that I've been wanting to play, just haven't had time because I've been taking a break from podcasting consistently like I have been doing, and kind of getting certain things in order for what's to come, and doing the proper preparation as I'm doing so right now. And as that's still a process that's going on. But there's also a lot of bonus episodes that I'm going to be putting out this week in regards to my energetic evolution, my overall understanding of this thing called life, and my connection to the Creator, and what the Creator of everything that is and ever will be that's within me, that light that's within me, that's also within you, that I always talk about, how I'm evolving in the understanding of what the purpose of that light that's within me is supposed to be in this current 3-dimensional or 5-dimensional reality that I'm experiencing. And all I could say is that I'm feeling really good about where I'm at right now, because I'm overcoming a lot of the things that I've been kind of holding back from having self-doubt, from being a people pleaser, from trying to conform to certain situations that I don't necessarily have to conform to to just growing spiritually and metaphysically, like, growing physically, mentally, emotionally, and really getting in tune with my empathic side, but not to the point where I'm taking on the stress and the worries of others around me or that I come in contact with, but understanding where they're at, but also understanding that that's not my problem. And if there is something I can do about it that is being welcomed, so be it. But I'm overly and ultimately concerned with how I'm using the light that's within me and how I'm projecting that light in my reality. And really truly being authentic with myself, being honest with myself, and being unapologetic about it and what I deem as worthy, what I know, what I don't know, what I'm learning about, how my belief systems are always evolving and never finite and just settled on one level of understanding. So I'm going through all these different processes, and it's been a beautiful thing. And it's been very uplifting. So when I start season six is going to be a doozy in the sense that it's going to be a whole different way in the way I podcast. It's also going to be an expression of how I've evolved as a spiritual being, having this physical experience and being a being of light, but also how I'm going to now more than ever be my authentic self with the utmost confidence, but at the same time, be humble with it, but be confident too. Not to be overly confident and not to be overly humble, but have a balance in that. Because I think a lot of times when we're overly humble, we kind of give our power away to something outside of ourselves, where we tend to, look to something else that's outside, or we think it's outside of ourselves to gain this power or understanding, when in actuality, that power is within us already. And we got to will it to what it needs to be or what it is already and know it to be true, instead of having some type of hope or faith for it to be true. I think hope and faith are just the processes that we have to get to when it comes to knowing our true selves and going with that knowing and being confident in that knowing and being unapologetic about that. And season 6 is all about the light within you and all around you. And it is that knowing. It's knowing that the light is in you and all around you, and being connected to the light that's in you that is all around you, so that you can be connected to that which is and always will be within you, so it can affect everything around you because it is a part of you. And that's the best way I can explain it, but I'd rather show it to you when we start season 6 than explaining it. Now, in this particular episode, and before I get into that, make sure that if you haven't subscribed to the email listing, subscribe to networkofawareness.com if you can. They'd greatly appreciate it. Definitely leave your reviews on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast. Preferably Apple, because that's the one that seems to statistically in the rating systems overall on a worldwide scale, definitely is the best for the metric system in podcasting and all of that. And one of the things I think I'm going to do going into season 6, I'm really contemplating and meditating on, is instead of being a society and culture podcast, I think I'm going to make society and culture a subcategory instead of the main category. Because I think that with what I've been talking about lately, I think social sciences is the best category for what I'm doing and what I'm going to continue to do. And then society and culture, spirituality, and education are the subcategories. Some people say that I should put spirituality as the main category, but the only reason I don't is because a lot of times spirituality and religion go hand in hand in the category. And what I talk about has nothing to do with religion. It's so far much greater than religion itself. It's all about awareness. And awareness, I truly believe and know within the core and fiber of the light within me is that's where the creator is. The creator is not a man. It's not a gender. It's not a woman. The creator is an energy and a force of divinity that we can only begin, keyword being begin, to understand. I don't think it's ever meant for us to understand it. It's only something we can begin to understand in these short physical lives that we live, that we're going to school with in these temples. The temples are a school for the spirit, and that school is you want to get the best education possible based on those experiences. Now, with me giving that whole introduction, that's an introduction of what's to come, right? But the introduction to this episode in regards to the guests that I'm going to be bringing on in just a moment, this is a past interview, right? But just to give you a little bit about Jeanell Greene, right? Jeanell Greene was a pretty awesome guest to have on because she was so vibrant, so uplifting, which you're going to experience. And she had a lot of gems and a lot of wisdom and knowledge based on her career and just based on her overall motivation and what inspires her when it comes to relationships, her family upbringing, what she's seen with her parents and all of that. And she's going to culminate that in giving you a concise overview or summary as to what compelled her to do the work that she does and what is that work and what it looks like and what it's been able to do for others. So if you're somebody that really wants to improve your personal relationships, especially if you're married or you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or if you are getting to know somebody, or if you have a certain dynamic relationship with your family and friends, or even coworkers, this is definitely an episode you want to pay attention to because she covers a lot. Now, the title of the episode is called End Generational Trauma to Protect Our Kids. And I think a lot of it, when it comes to this episode, from what I've gathered when I actually first did it and I reflected back on it, is that if you can end the generational trauma that you've experienced through your upbringing and break that cycle of trauma bonding and come to a whole new understanding and knowing of how to live your life and be fully healed and be an expression of what it looks like to be healed and to be completely reformed from those false beliefs that we cling and cleave onto. That's how you end the generational trauma to not be recycled with your children. Okay? But then at the end of the day, you can only be the best example for your children for them not to go down that path. It doesn't necessarily that it's always going to work, but sometimes children can be stubborn, and that stubbornness can lead to adulthood, and then that's their problem. You can only be the best example and guide them the way and hope that they're going to follow suit. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it don't. But you as a parent or just as an individual, doesn't even necessarily mean it has to be your own child. It could be just somebody that you mentor, somebody that you're a guardian for, somebody that looks up to you as a father or mother figure, and being the best example of how to be that wonderful, beautiful spiritual being, living a life of abundance and living a life of righteousness. And what I mean by righteousness is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, right? So, with all that being said, let's bring on Jeanell Greene, and I'm going to step back and play the broadcast that I had with her. It was pretty lengthy, so this is going to be a long show. So I hope that whoever's watching on the live can stick around long enough, because there's a lot of gems here. Of course, if you can't, you can always listen to the show later on the archive episode. So, with that being said, let's play the quick introduction to the show, because I completely forgot to do that. And then we'll start the show.
We live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth. A network of courage. A network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, ORRA the Informationalist.
Nothing like this.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
ORRA is a network full of awareness and gifts like ORRA the Informationalist.
How you doing?
Welcome to the show, Jeanell. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, ORRA?
I'm doing wonderful. Glad to have you on the show. And let's get right into it. I always like to ask my guests that, you know, what was their childhood like, the beginnings, so that we can get an understanding of how you came to be in the work that you do. And a lot of times childhood has a way of either inspiring that, or sometimes it has nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what was childhood like? Where did you grow up? Because I know you're from, you now live in Vancouver, Canada.
That's right.
So shout out to all the Canadians that are listening. Canada is now, between them and United Kingdom, second highest market share of people that listen to my show. So shout out to all the Canadians.
Yeah.
But where did you grow up? And how was your childhood like?
Yeah. So I am a first generation Canadian. My parents are from the Philippines. My mom came from a very poor family, you know, typical Filipino family. My grandma, you know, only had a grade 4 education. She was a single mom to 7 kids. So you can imagine the stories my mom used to tell me about neglect and starvation. And she used to tell me sometimes that her grandma would go to work and the 7 kids would be at home with no food. And their only, if you will, meal besides rice was salt. That was it. They had no meat. They had no vegetables. It was just rice and salt. And that's how they made it through. Or they would go knocking on neighbors' doors looking for leftovers from the people that they knew. So, you know, my childhood was very happy. You know, my parents definitely had this attitude of giving us a better life. And so I was brought up with this attitude of, you know, do your best, make the most of everything, don't take anything for granted, work hard. And so I've always been encouraged to be the best. And that's who I was. I was the best. I started dance lessons at the age of 4, and I started to compete at the age of 6. I won my first competition at 6 years old with a crazy, insane score.
What type of dancing?
I was in competitive ballet. Acrobatics was my specialty. That's where I really shone. Piano, tap, jazz, ballet, singing, baton. I was in all the parades. You know, the Santa Claus parade. I would be twisting my baton down that street for an hour and a half in the freezing cold. As my fingers start to froze after doing enough twirls, you're just like, my hand is going to fall off. But my mom was very was very encouraging. And my mom's always been a go-getter. My mom is the most amazing human being I know. And I'll talk about a little bit about her later on. We had a really great childhood. And I had parents that loved us unconditionally. So I think that was a beautiful gift that they gave us, was to actually know what that was like. And that really made a difference in my adult years, because as I'm going to tell you a little later, I did some pretty insane things that the traditional Filipino Canadian would never do. And I really got to a point in my life where I realized I am not the traditional woman. I'm not meant to have kids. I'm not meant to, work a 9-to-5 job. And my mom was such a great supporter and also example of what that's like. And so people would sometimes judge me, like, what do you mean you don't want kids or you don't have kids? And my mom would say, like, leave her alone. She's on her own path, doing her own thing. What do you mean you don't want to be a nurse? What do you want to, that's what Filipino women did. They became nurses. And when I said, Mom, that's not what I want to do. I want to be an actor. I want to do sales. I want to travel the world. My mom's like, go for it. And so I think that really set me up for who I became later on. Now, my life kind of came crashing down around the age of 9. My parents, up until this point, were very happy. My dad kind of treated my mom like she was on a pedestal, like she was the queen. She was his queen. And then something happened around the age of 8 or 9 where my dad actually had an affair with my mom's best friend who lived in our basement.
Yep, that's how it happens.
Yeah, and got her
you're not supposed to let your friends stay at your house like that.
Got her pregnant, and he left us. And it was a huge shock to everybody. But I remember being 9 years old and, sitting on my bed, and my mom calls us over into the living room. And so we all come rushing down. And so when I get to the bottom of the stairs, there's my mom, my dad, and a set of luggage. And I remember my mom saying to us, you guys, Dad's leaving. He doesn't love us anymore. That's all I remember. And I don't know if that's exactly what she said, but I feel like pretty confident that those were her words. And those were the words that really hurt, right?
Right.
And so I remember standing at that window, watching my dad leave, stepping into a car I didn't recognize. It was a brown car, I remember, and it was winter, and it was dark, so it was nighttime. And I just remember standing there with like tears in my eyes. Again, I'm 9, and I'm a daddy's girl. And I'm just waiting for someone to say this is a big joke, and, watching him drive away. And looking back at it now, what I discovered is what I made that moment mean in my 9-year-old mind is 3 things. Number 1, no one loves me. I'm unlovable. Because if I was lovable, my dad would have stayed. Because he said he loved me, but he didn't stay. Number 2, I can't trust people. And number 3, everybody I love will leave me at some point. And so, again, looking back, I saw how those decisions shaped the kind of relationships that I chose to be in, which were not very healthy ones.
So, like the relationships that you chose to be in romantically?
Yeah. Yeah. I chose the men that my parents never liked. I chose the men that I knew were bad for me. Like, I just knew it. But there was some appeal to these bad boys,
Were you rebellious at a certain age when you became like a teenager, like most girls?
I was rebellious for about a year, I would say. I think, I was a straight A student, right? I was dancing professionally. I was a pianist. I was working on my grades or whatever you want to call it. But there's definitely, 14, 15 when you start to, but nothing bad. Like, I never got into drugs. I wasn't having sex, nothing like that. It was more like trying to sneak the phone after midnight, or like unplugging the phone so it wouldn't ring when someone called, things like that, like those things. But I never, I was the good girl. And I think that's a big part of the journey I've been on, is going from this good girl, people pleasing, straight A student, Catholic girl who's told to just smile and be humble and all this, to who I am now, which is very, very different.
Oh, okay.
It was this huge transformation that I've gone through over the last 20 years that started with my divorce.
So let me ask you this. What compelled you in your spirit to come to this? What was the reasoning behind you saying, I don't want children?
It wasn't so much I didn't want them. It was just something that wasn't important to me. You know, like and I'm just going to assume a lot of women, when they think about their future, it's really about the children. It's like, I want
children and getting married.
Yeah. And it was a dream for me, but it wasn't what got me up in the morning. What got me up in the morning is like being successful, making a difference, making money, having the things that I wanted, living the life that my parents didn't have growing up. So my parents actually owned their own janitorial business. And I remember being around 8 years old and being in the toilets of this restaurant cleaning and thinking to myself, this is not the life that I want for myself. Like and my mom is a big dreamer. And so I kind of got some of her, that energy from her and being like, you know, she said, you can do anything you want. And so I dreamt about dancing. I dreamt about traveling. And yeah, sure, there were definitely kids in the story, but it wasn't this obsession that I think a lot of women feel as like their purpose in their life. I didn't think that was my purpose in my life. And so I went through my divorce. We didn't have children. Then I met my husband now, Mike, and we were just so in love and just enjoying each other's company. And then when we started to talk about kids and started trying for kids, it just didn't happen for us. And sometimes we would put it on pause because we had to deal with like financial things, you know, making sure that we were set up to have kids. And then when we started to go down that route, it became evident to us that, you know, we had some medical issues that was preventing us from getting pregnant. And so we went down the road of paternity, the doctors, the birth doctors and all that, and trying to get that squared away. But once we found out that the only option for us to do was in vitro, which is the very invasive procedure, very expensive. I think here it starts at about $30,000. And there's no guarantee that you're going to actually get what you want. We just decided, you know what, God, you know, we're both big, we have both really strong faith. And we said, you know what, if God hasn't provided this for us, who are we to mess with his plan if this is not part of it? Because if it was part of the plan, it would happen. And if it doesn't, who are we to go and muck with that? And I guess
that is absolutely true.
Yeah. And I was afraid to mess with that because I felt up until this point in my life, everything has gone really, really great. Even the whole thing with my dad, and we can even talk about that later, but I saw how everything that ever happened to me in my life was for a reason. And even in the moment, I didn't know what that reason was. And I felt like, how could anything possibly good can come out of this crappy situation? There was always light at the end of the tunnel. And so it was kind of the point where I said, you know what? We just got to trust. And then I had someone who said to me in my early 20s, Jeanell, maybe it's not meant for you to birth a human. Maybe for you, it's birthing something even greater. And that really stuck with me for the last 20 years. It's like, yeah, you know what? Anyone can have a child. And we can, you know, but what I really want to do is something so much bigger than just my own family and bigger than what I want. And that's really to transform families and marriages and lives beyond my own.
Right. And what that person was telling you was God's plan for you, which is the one that's the most important, right? So whatever purpose God had for you, maybe it wasn't meant for you to have children because God had a bigger plan or something that had nothing to do with that for you to serve many people, which a lot of times when you do have children, it's not so much that it's a negative thing, but it is a setback. It is going to set you back. It is going to change your priorities. It is going to create a situation where you're not going to be able to do the things that you used to do when you want to do them, especially.
Yeah. And, you know, and I would say too, my husband is actually the one who really wants kids. Like since he was 8 years old, he always knew he wanted to be a dad. He's such a giver. and such a nurturing, intuitive, he's this big 6'2", 250-pound man with a, shaved head and big goatee and burly everything, but he is just so soft inside. And, but I think one of the benefits is that I get to really have this extraordinary, passionate, sexy marriage that would be really, I don't want to say impossible, but really difficult to maintain. Like, we have a really great sex life, like really great. And we get to we get to travel wherever we want. And I don't think those things would be as easily accessible to us had we had little ones. And again, right, the work that I'm doing right now, it takes a lot of energy. And even just the two of us, I mean, my husband is my caretaker. My husband makes sure I eat. He makes sure that I'm like mentally well. When I need to rant and rave, he's the one who holds space for me. Like, he has a big duty in what I'm creating manifesting in this world. And
right.
It's a lot already. So I can't imagine all these other pieces in there. And so I really think it's perfect. And I wouldn't change a thing, because I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if I was meant to have kids. I never babysitted kids. I was always in the books. That was my thing.
Well, just the fact that you didn't want them from the beginning, maybe it's that thought process coming into you as a young child is for a reason as well. My very first guest that I've ever interviewed from Podmatch, which was Robert Riopel, he said, everything happens for a reason. And he said, do you know what the other half is? And I said, no. And he said, and that reason's there to serve you.
Yeah.
So that reason of you, whatever you've gone through, and, you not wanting a children, there's a reason why that is. And that reason is there to serve you. And you're coming to an understanding as to why every day and the work that you do.
Yeah. It was hard though. It was really hard. Cause like, even going to church, here's Mike and I being married for 2 years, and, Filipino people are extraordinary and they're very blunt. And sometimes it can come off, if you're not used to that kind of directness, can sound quite offensive. And so I would have people in my choir, because I sing also, would touch my belly and be like, are you pregnant? And I was a little bit overweight. I'm gonna be honest. I was probably about 30 pounds overweight. And they would, almost every week, they would touch my belly and be like, are you pregnant yet? Or they would, my family in the Philippines, when they're, even now, I'm 45. And I would get, emails from my cousins and say, happy birthday, cousin. Hope you have a baby soon. Like, that is greeting.
Hey, so you and I are the same age. When's your birthday?
December. I'm a Saggy. I'm a Saggy. So I'm turning 46 this year.
Okay, great.
But like, I had to be really strong in my own belief to not let those old programs, paradigms, whatever you want to call it, affect who I wanted to be. And again, having a mom that was like, hey, it's okay. You got your thing, rather than being like, no, you need to be this way. It was very liberating for me. So I really felt like I could do whatever it is that I wanted. And so I have lived a really, really extraordinary life. And, one of the funniest stories I wanted to share for people, because I think it's one of my favorite stories to tell. Do you mind? Can I share it?
Of course you can share it, yeah.
So my mom used to work at UBC Hospital, University of British Columbia. So they had this acute care wing. And they were building a new side of it. And the Queen of England, was coming to cut the ribbon. So we all got invited to go see her and watch this ceremony. So I'm about, I think, 5 or 6 years old. And so I'm super excited because I'm a dancer. So I'm like, oh, I know how to curtsy. So she sees me, I'm going to show her my best curtsy. So we're driving on the way to the hospital. And I said, Mom, we forgot to buy flowers. And my mom's like, for what? Well, the Queen, we got to give the Queen flowers. Like, you can't, I've been watching a lot of TV and I see all these kids, right, giving the Queen these flowers. She's like, oh, okay, fine. So she stops at the grocery store, picks up a $3 bunch of like daisies. It was like the cheapest thing she could find. Because of course, in her mind, she's like, there is no way Jeanell is going to get FaceTime with the Queen, right? So we get there and there's like these yellow ropes that are like, you know, keeping everybody in their stations. And then the policeman comes around and says, okay, please make sure your kids are behind this yellow rope. Well, this yellow rope, I'm like a petite person. This yellow rope was over my head. So to me, I'm like, what yellow rope? Right? So anyway, eventually she comes down the road and she's waving. And of course, everybody's going crazy and like screaming. And of course, everybody else had flowers. Everybody else was chucking their, throwing up their flowers, trying to get her attention. Of course, there I am, this little thing yelling like everybody else. And I could see her slowly passing by me. And I'm like freaking out because I'm like, but I've had these flowers and I can't go home with these flowers. And I had in my mind that I was going to meet her and do my curtsy. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to show her my curtsy. And what did I go do? I decided in that moment I was going to go for it. So I just like ran underneath the yellow rope, ran past the guards, and just started screaming for her. And everybody's like freaked. My mom is like, oh my God, someone is going to shoot my daughter right now, like in front of me, right? And so she turns around. She hears me, I guess. She turns around and she basically motions to everyone to like, it's okay. So she comes back to my area right in front of my mom and my family who are still behind the yellow rope. And she looks at me and she's like, are these flowers for me? And I said, yes, Your Majesty. And so she takes it from me and I do my curtsy. And in that moment, I get a picture. And the next day, that photo is now in the newspaper. And the reason I love this story, and when she passed away, actually I have it here. I still have the picture. I just wanted to show it to you.
Oh, nice.
So this is the picture that was captured and I got into the newspaper and I kept it because it was a reminder to me that that's who I need to be more like. That unstoppable, relentless,
courageous
little
daring
girl went for it. She didn't give a crap. I'm sure there was a thought that I could get in a lot of trouble for this, but I didn't care. I was like, this is my one shot. And I went for it and I won. So I'm like, yeah. And I feel like I've kind of gone through life like that. But now that I'm doing this new thing called running my own business and creating $1 million empire, that part of me is like, who do you think you are? You're just this, immigrant child from Filipino upbringings. Like, who do you think you are to have this extraordinary life that you dream of? And so my 6-year-old self is the person that I want to become more like. That's why I keep that around.
That's a beautiful story. I like how you correlate how you need to be off of that example. It says here in your bio that you had what was the defining moment in your life? I know that you mentioned the thing about your father cheating and that really changing things. But was there something else besides that moment that was the defining moment in your life?
Yeah.
And were you an adult already when that happened? What was that?
Well, I think, so I actually didn't even finish the story. So what happened was, that's like the sad part. There's actually a triumph on the end of this. So what happened is, my mom, the one memory I have of my mom during that time is spending a lot of time in church. I remember just sitting there and being like, how much longer are we going to be here? There she was on her knees every single day. It would so happen about 3 years later, after my dad moved out, he would come back. And he came up to my mom and he said, I'm sick. And he actually had renal failure. And he was now put on a transplant list for a new kidney and had to go through dialysis. And because he had to go through this, he had to stop working. Therefore, his girlfriend had no need for him anymore. And he started, for whatever reason, he decided that it would be best for him to come back, or at least try to come back into the house with us. Because my mom's a nurse. So my mom said yes. My mom said, absolutely. And she said, under 2 conditions. Number 1, you never go back there. If you are here, you are here. Number 2, we never talk about this ever again. We forgive, we let go, we move on.
Wow.
And she did that. And whenever my dad would try to bring it up because he had this like guilt or whatever, my mom's like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And so my dad became a better father, a better husband. He went to church every single day since he couldn't work anyway. And he wasn't going to church. He was going to church like some of the time with us before. Now it was like he had a spot and he was there at least 6 days a week. And when I used to sing in the choir loft, I would, even after he passed away, I would still see him standing there because that was his spot. And I would just assume that whenever I looked at that spot, he would be there because he was there so much. So anyway, so 3 years would go by. And then I would say I was in grade 7. I remember when we got the call that he had a transplant, a donor. And so he got his transplant. And the next 13 years of our lives was extraordinary. It was like back to normal, traveling, having fun, going to dance competitions until he passed away. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful to be with him in those last moments of, and just enjoying that, those, because, you know, you don't know back then that this is going to happen, that you're going to, my dad was 53 when he passed away. My mom was only 50. You know, I'm 46. I'm thinking, wow, my dad had a kidney transplant at the age of 40. So my dad was actually younger than me when he went and got cut open and a whole new organ put in. Like it blows my mind when I think about how young he was going through that. But what the beautiful end of the story was is that we actually got to meet our half brother the day of my dad's funeral. And he just came up to us and said, "Hey, I'm your brother. I'm your half brother." And what's so crazy about it is he looks carbon copy of my father. My brother kind of looks like my dad. I have my dad's eyes. My sister kind of looks like my dad's mom. But my half brother, oh my goodness, it's like looking at my dad's high school photo of his graduation photo. And since then, my half brother's name is Peter, has been part of our family. He calls my mom. He's over with my brother at their place and he lives with my mom. We say, "I love you" all the time. And it's been so wonderful to relive the memories of my dad for my brother's sake, because he doesn't know my brother, he doesn't know my dad. But it is just all from love. And there's no, and, you know, and what was great too is his mom never told him what happened. And so he's had the opportunity to talk to my mom and get her version of what happened. Mm. He's been able to find some closure as well, because he thought we hated him because he was the other kid or the reason. We're like, no, you're not the reason why that happened. You were just a product of that. And so I think he's been able to heal himself from that thing, feeling like he was the reason why our family split up. To actually being part of this family and having Christmases and all of that with us. So it's been quite miraculous.
So was that the defining moment in your life that changed the course of your life? All those things that happened? I think the facts, I talk about it because it's so much of who and why I do what I do. I don't know if it was I would probably say it's a pretty defining moment in my life for sure, but it's definitely why I do what I do, because when I saw that from love, anything is possible and that you can forgive anything if you really are committed to something. Like my mom and dad were so committed to our family staying together that they were willing to say, you know what, we screwed up and we're gonna move forward from this. We're not gonna allow this to ruin the time we have left together. And so just that like spirit of compassion and love and faith, really having faith that God would get us on the other side of it, really set me up to move forward in life. But yeah, you know what? I think that is a pretty defining moment in my life for sure. So you and one of my very best friends are in the similar field. He does life coaching for crisis in marriages and relationships. Mm. And he helps, couples either come back together or come to an understanding. and move on with their lives. And it looks like you do the same work. And now I have a better understanding of why you're in this type of work. I also noticed that when I was looking at your bio, it says, you know, besides marriage and family and being a life coach, for like basically like a marriage life coach and relationships, it says miracles. So I wanted to ask you, what is your definition, or what do you perceive to be, what does a miracle mean to you?
That's a really great question. I think there's big miracles and there's small miracles. I think if we are open to seeing miracles every day, I think for me, miracles is anything that is wanted and expected, but also unexpected, right? There's always this thing that we want. We're like, oh, but that's not possible because of this reason, this reason, this reason. The best example that I can think of is financial, really, is like, there's moments in my life where I'm like, I have no idea where then I need this X amount of money. I have no idea where it's going to come from. And then all of a sudden, 5 people book consults with me that I don't even know. To me, that's a miracle. I didn't expect it. I don't even know where they came from. I didn't do anything for it. It just happened. And it's all for the good. And so, you know, when I pray at night, what I pray for is that the people that I'm meant to help and meant to serve find me. And that I can, that's really what I pray for, is that they find me. Because I know I'm not meant to help everybody. And there is a very specific kind of client that I love to work with. And so I work on my own energy so that I attract those people. Like I am a big fan of manifestation and really sending those vibes out into the world. And I feel like that's how I met my husband, is really getting this really clean and intentional. And then just going, I don't know where this man is, but universe, now you know. And then I met my husband through the phone, and he lived 5,000 kilometers away from me on the other side of the country. So that was a miracle.
So you've had a marriage that, you know, had to end. You got divorced. Now you got remarried. You with this really great man that you love dearly and that you enjoy spending time with, and you feel very content and fulfilled in this relationship. And you do marriage counseling. Statistically, and this is from what I've researched in the past, that and even stuff that I've seen, where I've seen some crazy stuff when it comes to people getting married, especially when it comes to secrets and infidelity. Most marriages don't last beyond 5 years. So when I read that, I was like, wow. And what I also saw too, in my own personal experiences of seeing people that are married, is that more and more I'm starting to see couples be in competition with each other, which I find to be insane. But why do you think, based on your professional experience and the work that you do, that you specialize in, why are so many people getting divorced? Why are people so beyond divorce? Like, why are so many people that get married can't even get along with each other?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm going to try to condense my answer to this. I think the first thing, and I'm going to actually start with my own personal experience. I think that's the easiest place for me to go. For me, I got married because I was afraid of being alone. Straight up. I don't think I thought that in the moment, but looking back, I think I thought so little of myself, and I had been going through relationships like shoes and was kind of like, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep meeting these great guys? But when it comes to like committing and talking long-term, they're unable to see that far ahead. They just like, I just want to have fun. It's like, yeah, but I need to know that I'm investing into the right relationship because I want to settle down. And so I started online dating, right? This is in the 90s, early 2000s, right? Started online dating and just went on a whole bunch of dates. But I think the first thing was really like that I didn't see myself as worthy to find the kind of partner I actually wanted and felt like I needed to settle. And I thought that I could make any relationship work because I'm a pretty agreeable, easygoing person. I'm like, I can make anything work. And so I decided that who I wanted to marry was someone that was like me, someone who was kind of very powerful, very kind of alpha. Bad idea. Because all the things I didn't like about myself, he was my mirror. And so we just butted heads nonstop. I think the other reason is as children, our parents give us a certain amount of love. And sometimes it's enough. Sometimes it's more than enough. Sometimes it's not enough. And so then as we grow older and we start to look for our partner, we're looking for someone to fill that gap, to fill that hole, that love that mommy didn't give us. Or, I meet guys who tell me my dad never said, I love you, never gave us hugs. And now I'm kind of messed up and I can't do that to my own kids. I can't even give that love to my kids. And so I think a lot of it starts with our childhood and realizing that how our parents treated us oftentimes has very little to do with us and their ability to love based on what they got from and this is why generational trauma is so important. It's because until we stop and learn from those things, we're just going to keep repeating generational crap that's been following us for God knows how long.
Right.
I think the other thing too is in this modern day and age, we're taught a lot of, I think sometimes we get empowerment and fear mixed up. I think sometimes they try to make, being empowered means you don't need anyone, you got to be independent. But then now that you're independent and you don't need anyone, well, yeah, now nobody wants to be around you.
Right.
I know for women, we want to be independent, but to my husband's point, he's like, babe, but if you do everything, well, what's there for me to do for you? How can I contribute? How can I contribute to you when all of your needs are met? You make your own money, We now have women's stimulation toys, so sex is not even really required anymore. We've got ladders to get things up high. So then what is there really for men to do to provide for us? And I feel like men often feel really lost about how can they be that provider protector that they've been trained to be when the woman's like, I don't need you. I can do it myself. Right?
All by design. All by design.
And then we wonder why our husbands and wives go and cheat. Because we're not needed over here. We're not feeling like we're wanted, appreciated, loved, valued, important over here. Because he or she, I'm going to say she because just most of the time it's men, but of course it's both ways. But oftentimes...
Well, that number's changing these days.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying, I'm using men because that's the majority of it. But yeah,
right.
It is.
Traditionally, it was always men. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the reasons why it's happening is still the same. We don't get married to say, okay, I'm going to go get divorced or I'm getting married so that I can cheat on you. No, we go into it with very specific expectations. And then when those expectations are either not communicated or not received on the other side, now we feel like, oh, and this was me. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. I wanted a marriage just like my parents who had their own business. They cooked together, they cleaned together, they had fun together. Everything was together. And my first husband was not Filipino. He was French-German. His parents barely talked to each other. His parents barely talked to him. Dinner was like a business transaction. It was a very different dynamic. And so when I kind of said, well, this is what I want from you, he was just not able to give that to me. He wanted to, he just couldn't. And so there was a point that I had to just get really real with myself and do the work on myself and get responsible for the condition of the relationship on my part. And at the end of it, I sat him down. I said, you know what? I apologize for treating you the way I've been treating you. I've been mean. I've been withholding love. I've blamed you for our relationship, our marriage being what it is. And it's not your fault. It's me too. And what I got was that, you're perfect just the way you are. It's just not for me. And so I just stopped blaming him and just got responsible that this is what I want and you're not it. And it's okay. And so we actually went to the divorce courts together in the same car, sat together, filled out the paperwork together, and $80 later, we were done. And that was it. That was it. I mean, luckily we didn't have kids. We didn't have a house. And when you're talking about 5 years, yeah, it was about 5 years.
Oh, so you reached the max.
Well, it should have probably been more like 2 years.
Right.
But, you're just you're trying so hard to make it work. I didn't want to be one of the statistics because I swore to myself I would never get divorced, ever, ever, ever. And then I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this is not what God had planned for me, to be this unhappy. And the worst part about it was that I was changing into someone that I did not like.
A lot of these marriages that should have ended like yours 2 years ago, sometimes they even pass a 5-year mark.
Or 20.
Yeah, they'll pass a 20-year mark too. And they'll continue going because, especially here in the US, but here in Western civilization culture, which includes Canada, it's all about image. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't want to be looked at as the people that failed. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of couples out here that they'll stay together to basically keep that impression, to keep that image going for everybody else so they don't talk about them, and do their own thing and be completely content doing that for years upon years. There's other couples, where I have, I'm not going to mention who it is, but I've seen a situation that was, it was kind of crazy because for me, I'm the type of person that if you cheat on me, we're done. I'm not ever going to consider you again. I'm not going to do what your mother did. All right. It takes a lot to do that.
Yeah.
Now, am I forgiving? Yes. Have I been cheated on? Matter of fact, I was cheated on last year and I forgave, but I'm done. I'm not going to be like, hey, come back into my life. No. We're not doing that. Mm-hmm. I seen a situation where I knew somebody that was in a relationship for a long time, damn near almost 10 years, wind up getting married and finding out that 5 of those years, that person that they were with was with another person for 5 years straight.
Yeah.
The whole entire time. Yeah. And didn't find this out until after they got married.
Yeah.
Now, in a situation like that, I would leave. Yeah. I would just move on as much as I may love the person, whatever. But what wound up happening is they stayed together and then they had children. And I think that a lot of times people will have kids thinking
it'll make it better.
That the children is going to make the relationship better.
Yep.
And it only makes it worse. Mm-hmm. And then what boggles my mind is that's so many years of your life. And this is from my perspective, that are wasted on something that's never truly going to be meaningful because it's already been tainted already. It's almost like you're trying to make something that's an illusion real. Mm-hmm. You can't make an illusion real. No matter how much you try, it's still going to be it's going to be an illusion. It's not going to be what it's meant to be, because if it was going to be what it's meant to be, those certain things that happened would have never happened. Mm. So my question to you is, what we didn't even really get into this. You didn't really answer my question. What is that one big problem in society. And my apologies, because you did mention certain things about how women are independent and people don't need each other. But I look at it even deeper than that, because I know those are the things
my gosh, there's a bazillion reasons, right? That's just like what was right there. But I mean,
let's focus on one spiritual thing, like to the core and nucleus of it.
Yeah.
I think that most people don't take the opportunity to learn how to love themselves.
Yeah.
Which we're going to go into this.
Yeah.
We're going to go into the childhood trauma, right? Because that's what this whole episode about. Essentially, people, what we're talking about and what Jeanell focuses on and specializes in, and I'm going to read it to you right here. She focused on how to end generational trauma and by ending generational trauma, how to protect children, right? So that children can grow up better and actually, not have all of these chains on them that they have to break as adults, but actually be free from that imprisonment that childhood trauma provides. Mm-hmm. So, back to what I was saying is that I think people never really get a chance to love themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. I was raised by, and I'm going to tell you a quick story about me. My mother left my father at 5 years, when I was 5 years old, turning 5 years old. So it's like literally one day I'm with my family, my brother, my sister, my father. We live in like one of the worst neighborhoods in the Bronx. And then we go, the next day I wake up in the morning, there's a U-Haul truck. And I'm living with my now stepfather in a whole different environment in the Bronx, but in a home, a much better environment. And my mother was cheating on my father with this man, but my dad was cheating on my mother too. I never got to see my father cheating, but I remember my mother bringing me with her when she would go hang out with this man to go eat or whatever they were doing. I have vague memories of sitting in his car and getting dropped off. And getting dropped off at like the bottom of the street, like it's a real scandal. So one minute, I'm going in the U-Haul truck and my mother's saying goodbye to my father. And my father's all sad about it. And he tries to kiss my mother before she leaves in the U-Haul truck. And now I'm in this new home, cold turkey. And I grew up as a child from that point on with a lot of instability in the sense of there is no unity. Mm-hmm. Everything was very toxic, but I had 3 meals. I had clothes. I had a Nintendo. I had, I was considered to be privileged because I had these basic things, but I didn't have no emotional nourishment. Mm-hmm. I had a mother that was a narcissist, that was living the Viva Loca, doing herself, focused on this man, focused on herself. I didn't get that emotional attention. The man who wound up being my stepfather, who's now passed away, this man was always trying to make me feel less than, always making me feel like I wasn't going to be good enough to do anything great. But deep down inside, I knew that was nonsense. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it still had an effect on me to this day, where sometimes it's not as bad as it used to be, but I always feel like I have to prove myself worthy to people because of that.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I say all of this, right, is because it took me a long time to even learn. And I put emphasis on learning how to love myself. It's a lot of things I had to go through in order to learn how to love myself. And last year, I just learned how to set boundaries for the first time. So this is a never-ending process that I'm going through.
Yeah.
But I think that what you do is very powerful work, because something like that, some people would be like, damn, poor guy, you had to go through that. But some of the stories that I hear from other people that have gone through far, far worse than what I've gone through.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about rape, sexual molestation, physical, like real physical abuse where you're getting beat down, broken bones, you know what I mean? Like not being fed for like a month. I mean, crazy stuff that I would hear about how kids are growing up. I didn't grow up like that. But even though I didn't grow up like that, my trauma was the lack of people having an emotional connection. It was just like, I got that emotional connection with my friends.
Yeah.
And that's what it's been like till present day.
Yeah.
Like even present day, as much as I may love my brothers and my sister, I don't really have an emotional connection with them. I may have emotional connections with them in moments, but a lot of them I don't even talk to no more. I only talk to one brother now. Right? And when I do talk with my mother, it's very limited because my mother's a narcissist. My mother's a very toxic individual. You know, as much as I love her, she's toxic. Her mood swings. It's like she's one of those types of people that you know those people that when there's nothing wrong and everything's going great, they're going to find something wrong. Yeah. You know, you could go to the best restaurant in town, 5-star, and they're going to be like, oh, this soup is too cold. Or this rice is overcooked. You know, they're going to find something wrong. Or if not, they're going to create something wrong where there's nothing wrong. Yeah. That's the type of mother I have. Yeah. So,
well, I want to say is like those people. So this is how I reframe those kind of people in my life. And I say this because I've done the work myself. When the way that we look at the world and the way that we look at each other or others is often the way we look at ourselves. And so when I hear someone talking about not good enough and they're always complaining and nobody's good enough, my question is always like, yeah, but is that the conversation you have for yourself? Do you feel like you're not good enough? Because if you don't feel that, you're going to see that filter everywhere else in your life. And so it's really about like, where did that even come from, right? Like rolling back the tape and trying to get to that. But, you know, to your point about self-love, I think self-love is kind of complicated because I didn't learn self-love till I started to really coach. Because love, here's the thing. We think love is unconditional, but it's not. Like, let's be real, right? So if you asked me 10 years ago, do you love yourself? I probably would have said, yeah, I think so. But as an entrepreneur and as a super achiever that I've always been my whole life, I notice something about myself. I love myself a lot when the clients are rolling in, the money's rolling in, business is doing that well, relationships, when that's going on, yeah, I love myself. But when my clients are being not great, when my finances are crazy or some weird, or my client who says they're going to be yes is now and now the self-love starts to drop. And I notice for myself that my worthiness is attached to success. When I feel successful, I feel worthy. So for other people, that might be people pleasing. When I people please, when I make others happy, then I'm happy. But then now it's this like tit for tat, and it's not actually clean energy. It's you're trying to get self-validation from other people rather than being able to self-validate yourself. Right. And just know that you're a good person. You don't need anybody to tell you that you're beautiful, sexy, amazing. But yet, you know, I think again, going back to our childhood, that's how we were trained, right? When you're a good little girl, you get love and pretty gifts and you can get whatever you want. And when you're bad, no one pays attention to you. You get spanked, you get grounded. And so now we're like these robots that just are reaction machines. And so I think that's why coaching is so important, is because when you can actually be in control of this and this, right, the emotions, and really start to question, okay, why do I do that? Oh, I just had that thought that I'm dumb. Is that true? No, it's not true. Why would I even think that? But most of us, we just have the thought, oh, I'm dumb. Oh, I'm not good enough. And then we just take it for that. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not good enough. Well, no, That's just the thought. So I think it's about building those mental muscles to be able to see that, first of all, the people that hurt us, especially our parents, they have their own stuff going on. And they're no different from us. They're doing the best they can. It's not because they were terrible people or that, that we were terrible. It's just that they were just doing the best they can. Whether that's the truth or not is irrelevant. But we got to be able to self-regulate for ourselves the thoughts that we have, right? I had a thought that my dad didn't love me anymore. I had a thought that I'm unworthy and that I'm crap and all the stuff. And then I just had to say, no, that's not what I want to believe, because those thoughts create the reality that I had. And I knew that if I wanted to change my reality, change the kind of partner that I wanted in my life and not attract the same kind of people that I had been for 20 years, I had to change. I had to change my energy. I had to change my thoughts. I had to change the things that I allowed myself to be congruent with, to actually agree with. And now I've gotten really good at going, hold on, where did that voice come from? That wasn't my voice. That was my grandma's voice. That was my dancing teacher's voice who was telling me I wasn't been good enough. That wasn't my voice. And so now I can bring compassion and forgiveness to those things. And one of the tricks that I do is I bless people. So it's really hard to be mad at someone when you're blessing them. So if I have someone who hurt me, when I pray, I go, Lord, let me bless that person. And once I go into that spiritual part of me that actually has compassion for all things, now I can actually be empathetic and let that pain go. Because forgiveness is not for them, right? It's not about them saying sorry to us. Forgiveness is for us to let ourselves to break free from the emotional prison that we put ourselves into. We think other people do it. No. No one can do that. Only we can put ourselves in that prison.
That is so true. So I was just thinking, your work, you're helping people end generational trauma. The sad part is I was thinking about, I was like, I understand how to end generational trauma with the work you do, in the sense that you help people end that trauma within themselves that they got from their childhood, so they don't pass it on to their kids, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Because I was like, you can't help a child end generational trauma because they're going through it.
Yeah.
They don't know that they're going through it until they become an adult.
Yeah.
And life starts to become very depressing.
Yeah.
And they feel a sense of hopelessness. The sad part is that a lot of people are not going to seek you out, Jeanell. A lot of people are going to struggle, and they're going to die in that trauma, in that heartache, and they're going to live a life of hopelessness and depression. And a lot of times it leads to suicide. Suicide's a big thing.
Yeah.
Especially when it stems from childhood trauma. Especially if the childhood trauma persists and it becomes adult trauma.
Yeah, which is usually what happens.
Right. So, with all that being said, let's talk about the work you do and let the listeners know, what are some of the key things that you help people realize that they can do so that they can break free from that trauma and not pass it on to the future generations of their families?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing I think is to heal ourselves, really, right? That's where it begins. So the first step with any of my clients that come on is awareness, right?
Well, that's why we're here, right?
Right. So many of us are so asleep. And I was there, 20, 25 years ago, I was asleep to my life. I was just like, wake me up when the world is going well. Otherwise, just leave me alone. I'm going to numb out. I'm going to put on this plastic smile on my face. I'm just going to survive the day so that I was bullied a lot when I was a kid. I was sexually molested. I was a brainiac who got teased, and I dated a lot of the popular boys. So I had a lot of girls who were very jealous and hated me, even though they knew nothing about me. And so a lot of my teen years was hiding, because if I hid, nobody would hurt me. And then I went through my divorce, and then I got real with myself and said, okay, there is something about me that I don't even know that I'm dealing with. And so I put myself in a program that was really geared to really go into those nasty places where we're unwilling to go because it's so scary. But because you're in a group environment, it's okay. And so I think that's what's really powerful about having support, is that you can go to places, but you don't have to go at it alone. And if you can find someone who's been there, who's helped other people do that, and even better, if they've been it through them themselves, they're not just this person goes, oh, I understand. You know, those people that say they understand, but they don't know what you're dealing with. It's like when my dad passed away and everybody said, oh, I understand how you feel. I'm like, screw you. You do not know how I feel. Did one of your parents die? No. So don't tell me you understand. Do you know what I mean? So I think awareness is number one. Number two, getting responsible. It's like, okay, this is what I've created based on who I've been being up until this point. And then it's really about, okay, what is it that I actually want? Because the problem that I see with most people, whether they come to me for life coaching or relationship coaching, is they are super clear about what they don't want. They know all the icky stuff. They can spend 3 hours telling me all the things that are wrong with their life. But when I say, okay, well, I got that this is what you don't want, but what is it that you do want? They look at me like I have 3 heads. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Or they'll say to me, you know, I've never thought about that. So this is the problem, is because all that energy, you know, we have, 60,000 thoughts a day or something. And I think 85% of them are the same from yesterday. If those thoughts are all negative from yesterday, why would you think that anything would be any different? And so what I start to do is I really start to help them to shift that energy from, you know, focusing on what's on the resistance, right? Because when people tell me they're tired, I'm so exhausted. The exhaustion is from the resistance, right? The world, okay, I'm just going to get a little theoretical here. The world has no problems. The world is the world it is. Our body doesn't have a problem. We have a problem with our body. And That's so right. It's like you're talking about your mom. She can find problems anywhere you put her, right? Big white room with nothing in it. I'm sure she'll find something wrong with it, right? So it's really about shifting to a more positive energy, something that is going to pull you forward. Because here's my philosophy. You're either running away from something or you're running towards something. I say 95% of people are running away from something. And there's no power in that. And you're always going to be running. But when you can shift that to, okay, here's what I want, right? And this is what happened with my parents. Like, this is what I want. I want us to be together. I want this family to survive. I want our kids to have both of us as parents, not doing this back and forth home thing. That's what I want. And then my mom said, that's what I want too. And so they were able to create a vision, a structure, an agreement about where they were heading. But most couples, they just swim in the same swamp that they've been living in, hating it, but having no intention of changing that. They just live in there and go, oh, guess this is our life. Okay. Without any creation. And like you said earlier, sometimes it's that they don't see the hope. They're so resigned. They're so cynical. They've been told by people that this is just how life is supposed to be hard, you know, or they don't deserve to be, you know, we have a story that we don't deserve to be happy. And so when we start to believe these negative stories, we convince ourselves that that's what we're meant to have. And then we wonder why we're so unhappy. And so it's just this vicious cycle that we get caught into. And so that's why for me, I read like 3 books at a time, because I have to continually and intellectually understand, okay, what am I dealing with? And then also, you know, intuitively really feel all of that. I think one of the things you talked about with children is that we need our children and ourselves to feel safe. Safety, you know, when my parents split up and my dad went out that door, the first thing that went was safety. I am not safe. What's happening? The family, the 2 people that I thought were like, they were my pillars, are now falling apart. And like to your point, over 30% of children that are raised in dysfunctional homes have a 30% higher chance of suicide, mental illness, right? Or some sort of trauma. And so I think as parents, we think our job is just, like you said, put food on the table, make sure you get a good education, survive, basically. But I believe it's up to parents to provide so much more than that. But they can't do that until they are ready to do that for themselves. You can't teach something you don't know. It's like these parents who tell their kids to be polite, be kind and all these things, but their actions don't even align with that. And so now this child's confused. Like, okay, you tell me this thing, but then how you behave. And so this is, again, what I say to parents, like, when you come to me for coaching, this is not just about the two of you getting along. This is so much bigger than the two of you. This is about your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids. And you teaching them what it looks like to be patient, to be tolerant, to communicate with respect, to show appreciation, to have fun with your partner, to laugh. All these things I got from my parents. And now I get to create that with Mike. And it's extraordinary. But there's a lot of work that has to happen. And I think the last thing about this is that a lot of us expect it. It's like what's that word? Not intention. What's that word I'm thinking? It starts with an I. Entitled.
Entitled.
We're entitled. I have a client right now.
I thought entitled was with an E, but okay.
Oh, maybe. I'm just like, yeah, you're right. It isn't E. But it's an entitlement. Like, okay, so why do we get married? Why do we get in partnership? Because we don't want to be alone. We want to go through life with a partner. That's kind of how it starts. But then afterwards, it turns into that you need to make me happy. You need to please me.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I hate that statement, happy wife, happy life. I think that's the most asinine comment I've ever heard in my life. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it's like, if my wife is happy, what about my happiness? So it's just all about her. And I'm just the person that's just supposed to make her happy. It doesn't even make sense. But sorry to interrupt you, but I just had to say that because I think it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Happy wife, happy life. It's like.
Well, I actually don't. I actually do agree with it. Because most men, and this might be just my clientele, I attract women that are very strong like me. And then the men are usually the opposite.
Right.
And so the man is just like, when I ask a guy, guys are so simple. And I actually prefer working with men. They're just easy. With a guy, okay, honey, what do you want? He's like, I just want to feel appreciated. I want to have more sex. I want to be respected. Okay, great. However, if the woman is unhappy, she is not going to give him any of those things. When the woman is happy, she will give him those things. And so I know it sounds messed up, but it actually works. And so what we do, me and the guy do, is like, okay, let's focus. What is she complaining about? Okay, she complains that she has no free time. Okay, this week you send her to get her nails done and take care of the kids. Can you do that this week? Yeah. Okay, great. The next week, she is on cloud 9. She is not fighting with him. She is like smiles. And at the end of the day, what the husband says, I just want her to be happy. Because when she's happy, she makes my life less miserable. And so I do kind of agree with that. And obviously in a very, very two-dimensional way. But
what you just said, though, it takes two to tango. So it's not just the happiness of the wife. It is the happiness of the husband. Yeah, the man has to have value in that relationship just as much as the woman wants to feel valued.
Yeah.
So you can't have one without the other and the other without the one. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
My thing is this, and I'm talking from a spiritual perspective. When you have God as the foundation of a marriage, that marriage won't fail. Because the greater purpose is serving the Most High and letting God be first. And then everything second, third, and fourth after that. And when you have relationships that are focused on pleasing God as being God's creations, as we all are created in the image of that which is and always will be, that's the successful relationship. So it's not about making each other happy. We can make each other happy by being the great vessels in pleasing God through our life and our works and how we have compassion, all those fruits of the Spirit, compassion, love, charity, empathy. And when you have two people operating on that level, then you can have something successful. But it's like, if I'm going to put my energy into a woman just to please her, then all I'm doing is venerating another person. I'm practicing idol worship. It's like my happiness is solely based on making you sure
that's
that
not what
you're
I'm
happy.
saying. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know that's not what you're saying. And and when you explained it beautifully. It was very eloquent. I got it. I just wanted to put emphasis that the way you explained it, the man has to be happy too.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, this is the carrot. I'm like, if you make her happy, because here's the thing. The problem is that we have two people. Imagine two people sitting across from each other going, you need to listen to me. Both people are not listening. Both people are talking. So someone needs to start it. So this philosophy I have is just like, okay, she has because here's the thing. I'm going to be super straight with you. Most of the time, the man doesn't have a problem. He's like, I'm okay. She's the one who's like, I don't want this. And he doesn't do this. And so this is where we start. I say, okay, can you and I work together just to get her not so cranky? Because once she comes down and she feels, because really, here's what I teach. Under every complaint is a desire. And sometimes we focus too much on the negative complaint and not enough on what is she actually, or what is he actually saying to me? What is the actual desire underneath? You never spend time with me. What she's really saying is, you know what? I miss you. I'm lonely. But we don't hear that. We just hear you're not good enough.
Right.
Right. And so
that also stems from how we communicate with each other.
Yeah. And we were never taught, and this is a great topic. We were never taught how to communicate in a loving, empathetic, and connected way. If you think about our school system is taught for us to win, to debate, to justify, to dominate, to judge. Yeah, but and it's great in school, but to bring that into relationships, it doesn't work. And especially with women. Women don't want your logic. They don't want the answers. They just want you to listen and show that you care. My husband, he is the most supportive husband anyone could ever have. And honestly, this is the realm of our conversations. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry you feel that way. I love you. I've got your back. Everything's going to be okay. That's all he says to me. He doesn't try to fix me. He doesn't give me advice. He just loves me. And that's all I need. And I feel like as men, oftentimes you just want to fix, right? Give me a problem, I'll fix it. I'll give you a solution. And oftentimes that's actually the last thing you should be doing when a woman is in her emotional frenzy.
And that's another thing too, Jeanell, is that I think when a lot of people get married, they're not really accepting the person for who they are. Yeah. That's a big problem because it's like, and that goes on both sides. It's like, you have to accept the good with the bad.
Yeah.
It can't be that when the bad starts happening, you're like, oh, well, I don't like this. We got to change this. No. This is what you got yourself into. So if you get married, you committed to saying, you know what? I'm accepting the good, even in your marriage vows, right? It's like through sickness and through health. It's not through health. And then when the sickness comes, it's like, oh, I can't deal with this. You're sick. That's your mother. Bless her soul. Your mother stuck to those vows. Even when he cheated, she got him when he was sick and took him back. That's amazing.
I know. I don't know if I would have done the same thing. I don't know. Right. I don't know.
Right. But that's because of your mother's spiritual understanding. What did your mother do? She went and put God first and asked God to give her the answers and let God guide her spirit and how she was going to deal with your father. And that compelled your father to have a better respect for God and for your mother.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing I'm talking about. This is why this is why I don't like that statement, because I've seen where guys be like, happy wife, happy. I think that's like, you're a cornball. Like, you're weak to me. Like, what? I cannot hang out with a man that talks like that. Sorry. You speak like that around me. It's like, nah, bro, go over there. I don't even want to hear that in my circumference, because I've always seen those same guys that talk like that. They get bullied by their wives. Yeah. It's like their wives be like this. Yeah. It's like, hey, get up, do this, do that, go change the diapers. Oh, the baby's crying. Go get the milk. And it's like, what are you doing besides, giving instructions to your husband? Yeah. And then he's there like, oh, I just want to make sure she's happy. I don't want. They're walking on eggshells.
But here's the thing that's because I meet these men. They're like, I do all these things for her. Why isn't she happy? Here's the thing, guys. Need to hear me loud and clear. That is not what she needs. Because here's the thing. Men, right? We all know this. For the most part, men are not as emotionally developed as women are. Absolutely. Men are really good at doing things. So when there's a problem, they go automatically into doing. Even though the problem is not the doing, the problem is she doesn't feel connected. She doesn't feel loved. She feels no passion. Right? It's the emotional piece that's missing. But because men don't know how to deal with that, they don't have the tools. They were never taught. They go to what they know, which is doing. So here they go running around like a crazy person, trying to make her happy, when that's actually not what she wants. That's not what actually is going to make her happy. What she needs. Like, so I have a client right now. I met with them last night. Her issue is that their marriage is great. They make tons of money, all of that. They have great kids. The problem for her, no affection. She's like, I want hugging. I want kissing. I want sex once a week. She has this little laundry list. And it hasn't been happening. So I said to him in privacy, because I do private coaching as well as couples coaching. It's a combination package that I offer. And I said to him, listen, you know what she wants. So why haven't you done it? He's like, I can do it. It's just that she always shuts me down. She rejects me. It's never good enough. If I give her one kiss, she's like, why can't you give me 5? So it's like, what is my motivation to keep doing what she's doing when she doesn't appreciate what I do for her? Right. So I said, okay. So I asked him. So I said, because I give my clients homework. I said, what are you promising to do this week? He says, I promise to hold her hand, kiss, sex once a week, da, 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 da. I said, okay, great. And what do you need from her in order for you to fulfill on what you're committed to? And he just said, you know what? I just need her to not be so cranky. And I need her to appreciate me and not to judge everything I do and make it wrong. I said, great. So if she did all these things, would you be willing to do all those things for her? He's like, absolutely. It is always, a conversation about love. And it's not about, it's just about love. And I think that society's kind of messed us up, because now it's like very conditional. It's like, oh, I love you, but I'll only love you when you give me hugs and you do all these things for me. But when you don't do it, I don't love you. I might not say that, but I'm going to treat you like that. And then you wonder why husbands cheat. You wonder why couples divorce. It's because we try to play this power struggle game where nobody wins. Nobody.
Right. That's the competition I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That power struggle is a form of competition. Yeah. It's like, I got to outdo you and I got to feel like I'm winning here, which stems from like the education system. And it also stems from how society is being socially engineered. Yeah. We just live in a very toxic world. And especially in Western civilization compared to Eastern, it's a little bit even more toxic because we have capitalism and we also have narcissism. And because we have narcissism, you have a society that has very little empathy. And these kids these days, they have zero empathy. Yeah. I have a 21-year-old that sometimes I'm like, I'm like, you're a space cadet. Like, are you even in this atmosphere? Like, you're in orbit somewhere. Yeah. Because they don't have no sense of direction, no matter how much you try to give it to them. And it's like being depressed is cool now for kids. It's the in thing to do. It's like smoking cigarettes for kids. It's like, oh, I'm, if I'm depressed, I'm cool. Not understanding that by entertaining those thoughts, it's going to put them down a very dark path that they might not be able to get out of. And that's why you have freaking, it's disgusting at the same time, because I know where it's coming from and the powers that shouldn't be and how they're manipulating things, especially when it comes to government. But it breaks my heart to see these stories about a 7 and 9-year-old committing suicide, especially during the pandemic, when these kids couldn't go to school and they killed themselves. Can you imagine? Like, I understand a teenager committing suicide. You've heard about that throughout the ages, throughout the decades. Obviously, adults. My nephew committed suicide at 26 years old. But for a 7-year-old to take their life, that's when I'm like, that is an example of where we're at as a society when you have 7-year-olds committing suicide.
Yeah. They're not even in that place yet where they're even going through that phase of life where you question, like, 7 years old, the world should still be like,
it's like, amazing. Yay. It's like peanut butter and jelly. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they're looking at their lives like, this is hopeless. There's nothing worth living for at 7, 8, 9 years old. It's insane.
And here's the crazy part about it. They didn't just think that, they saw that somewhere. Someone said something to them where they thought, oh, this sounds like a good idea. Someone planted that in
social media. So, matter of fact, there's a couple of lawsuits right now pending where in TikTok, they basically have been engineering it to where a lot of kids that start their TikTok accounts, they'll get flooded with suicide videos.
Why?
It's something in the algorithms. Okay. So it's becoming a big problem where kids are having these algorithms being sent to them where they're getting multiple videos of kids committing suicide. But it's also in the music, because in the hip hop industry, there's a really great documentary, if you ever get to watch, it's called Rap Star. It's on Prime. And it shows on how the pharmaceutical industry has infiltrated the music industry. And the kids that are growing up basically on pharmaceuticals from the ages of like 3 to 4 years old and beyond have this chemical imbalance where their whole entire thought process is becoming a culture of way kids are. So the whole self-mutilization thing has become very popular. Taking Xanax and Adderall to lift you up, Xanax to zone you out, or whatever the case is, because it's creating generation where, when I was growing up, I didn't think I was going to live past the age of 21. It's still that mindset, especially when you grow up in the hood and you grow up around toxic environment. So you still have that element, but now you have the chemical imbalance coming from these drugs to where these kids are they're taking drugs that are not like marijuana and alcohol like we did when we were growing up, but it's like pharmaceutical stuff that's heavy duty stuff that numbs you from emotions. It takes dopamine to a whole nother level. It eliminates dopamine. It creates such an imbalance where these kids now, not only are they dealing with the generational trauma that you and I dealt with, but now they got to deal with this whole validation thing on social media, feeling like if they don't have 100,000 followers, they're not worthy. You and I felt like we weren't worthy if we didn't get affection from our parents or say, hey, good job. I like that painting. They got all that stuff to deal with, But now they're like, oh, Susie's got 100,000 followers and I only got 10. I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah. What do I need
My
to
life
get?
ain't a
What do I
mountain.
need to do to get better ratings? Oh, maybe I'll. Yeah.
And then the stuff they got to do is depraving, right? They got to show their body parts, or do something really stupid like eat a bunch of rocks or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these are all the things that are happening.
Yeah.
And, when I have a lot of people come on this show, and this show is international. There's like it's over in 50 countries now. And one of the things I focus on, the reason why what I focus on this show is it's all about awareness, right? But the awareness that I focus on is that we have to realize that we have been lied to. Mostly everything in this world is a lie. And this is one of the ways to end generational trauma, in my opinion, is that first we have to teach people that everything you've learned is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. It's a legacy. It's a legacy of lies. That's why I have a series called Legacy of Lies. I might make this my Legacy of Lies series, but no, this is Truth Seeker series. I already claimed it for that, but there's a legacy of lies to where if you can understand that you are being lied to, then you can start understanding what the truth is and living that truth in your life, opposed to accepting the lie as the truth.
Yeah. And a lot of these lies, they come from social media, they come from other people, but a lot of it, most of it comes inside here. Right. And usually it's an influence from something out here in the world. But for me, the lies that I struggle with are the lies I tell myself. And maybe those lies were fed to me when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. Sure. But it is this 46-year-old person now that needs to make the choice. Am I going to continue to believe the lies, or am I going to let it go? Right. And so
there you go. And that's why the work you do is so important.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, one of the big lies that I help my clients break through is this whole thing about being selfish, because women feel like they have to completely give themselves over to everyone else and there's never anything left for them. And so trying to convince them that, you know what, it's actually okay to take care of yourself. Like, no one's expecting you to kill yourself. But it's such a thing that has been programmed into us since we were so young, that you need to put everyone else ahead of yourself. You need to self-sacrifice, and you need to show everybody how much you're sacrificing and talking about how much it is. See, here's the thing with my mom. My mom never once, ever talked about how hard her life was, or how hard it was being a mom, or how difficult I was being, or how she's giving herself over to us. And she never spoke that way. Everything she did was like in honor. Like, it was like, I am your mom and I get to do these things for you because I love you, not because you're an inconvenience. But I know from talking to my clients as well as my friends, a lot of parents spoke like that to their children, especially if they're from a broken home where the father was a jerk and now the mom's mad at him, and all she does is talk smack about him to the kid, or even worse, take it out on their kid.
Yeah. And I was one of those parents that I would talk smack about my daughter's mom. And even though what I was saying, a lot of it was true, I shouldn't have brought it up. And what's interesting is that my daughter gave me hell, but then wound up apologizing to me and saying, Dad, everything you said about mom is so true. She's like, she's just a miserable person and she's made my life hell. And I had to be like, you know what? As much as I can appreciate that, I still messed up. Yeah. I'm just as responsible as your mother. Even though I'm not a piece of crap like your mother, I still did something that made you like this. Yeah, I added fuel to the fire.
That's right. That's right. You took responsibility. And I think at the end of the day, for those of you out there that are looking to make a difference in your relationship, that's really where it starts. Because it's so easy to point the finger everywhere else. So easy. And none of it is going to make a difference. And where the difference is going to be made is with you. Be the change you wish to see. There's too many people out there that say, and I hear this all the time, my husband never appreciates me. And I say, okay, fair enough. So here's your homework this week. I want you to go and appreciate him. And she looks at me like I'm crazy. She's like, what? Why do I need to appreciate him? He hasn't done anything for me. I said, interesting. So you want him to appreciate you, but you're unwilling to appreciate him? Interesting, right? And so
That's one of my favorite words.
We want so many things from other people, yet we're unwilling to do the work for ourselves. We want everybody else to do it. We want everybody else to do. Go fix yourself. Go be different. Go be a better husband. But we're not willing to change because we're like, I'm fine. I don't need to change. And that's where the problem is.
We talk about this at my church so much. It's all about repentance, because you have to be able to look in the mirror honestly with yourself. And this is the thing, is that most people, the biggest problem is that when they look in the mirror, they don't want to let go of the lie that they've embraced, even though they know it's a lie and they know they want to get rid of it, but they're not willing to put in the work, because to let go of that lie, it's going to take a major, major work to transform themselves into that new person that they truly want to be. But it's only those that are truly committed to the point where they're like, this old person or this person that I'm looking at in the mirror can no longer exist. Yeah. Because it doesn't work. But not everybody wants to look at themselves, because they want to look at everything outside of themselves, because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to point the finger.
Absolutely. And as humans, innately, we just want to survive. And even though change isn't death threatening, it feels like it, right? It feels really like, oh my God, what failure can feel like death for a lot of people. Rejection can feel like death for a lot of people. It's the same experience in the body of dying. And so I think, that's my opinion, I think that's why so many people, even though they know they need to change, even though they need to lose that 100 pounds, otherwise they're going to die of a heart attack, they still don't make the change, because the change is just as uncomfortable. And change is in the realm of the unknown. And as humans, we crave safety, we crave certainty, right? And that, all of the stuff that we want to be, the person we want to become, the Jeanell that makes $1 million a year, I don't know her. I don't know her yet. And she is on the outside. She is outside of my comfort zone right now. So yeah, it's hard. I get it. It's hard to change when you don't have support with someone that says, hey, I know you want to change. I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I got your back. You're not going to die. You're not going to fall. You can do this.
Right. Very powerful stuff, and let me, I got to give you a round of applause for that.
Thank you.
So, remember I mentioned to you, I want you to come back, right? Because
sure.
this can't be just a one-time thing, because there's so much more to cover.
Yes.
I think we just touched the surface of everything right now.
Yes.
In these 90 minutes that we've been on, right, talking. So for those that are listening, I'm going to have Jeanell come back for multiple episodes. This is actually a bonus episode in the Truth Seeker series before, before we start season 6. And give me 1 second, Jeanell. Just hold on 1 second. Even marriages, how to just have I hate that when that happens, but yeah, so Jeanell, I'm gonna have you come back on the show, and we're gonna continue this, right? How to end generational trauma, how to have more successful marriages, and not just even marriages, how to just have successful relationships between two people, whether it be husband or wife, friends, mother, father, son, daughter. How to communicate and how to really understand and have empathy, because that's where it all stems from. The world needs more empathy, because narcissism is rising, especially in women. Traditionally, it was always men. That's why when you were saying men usually are the cheaters, yes, but now it's the women. Now the women are looking at the men as pieces of meat when it used to be the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Now the men are like, I don't want you to look at me as a piece of meat. But it's like they're doing the same thing that men used to do. So it's a big problem, you know, and that's why I respect the work that you do, because as light warriors, we have to keep bringing light into this darkness, you know, and not accepting the darkness for the light, but actually accepting the light for the light and being the light so that other people can see the example and make that change. But, you know, it's not easy.
It's not easy. And, you know, I think one of the things my friends often tease me, they say, Jeanell, you are the most compassionate person I have ever met. Like, I don't know how you do and how you put up with these people. And I say to them, you know, what I do is I remind myself that I am no different than those people. They are me 25 years ago. And if I am someone of love, then I am someone of compassion. And I'm not going to judge them. And I think that's a philosophy in life that has brought me really far, is just to know, you know, I don't know where they've been. I don't know who brought them up. I don't know the pain and heartbreak they've been through. I don't know what trauma they've had. And all that matters is this moment in time where they're here in a place where they're like, I'm ready to discover what there is for me to discover about myself and to question everything I think I know. And that's what gets me excited, is working with people who say, I know I don't know everything, and I'm willing to learn to be a better person, to be a better husband, to be a better father and friend and a human. Because at the end of the day, like you said, when our lives are over, what is it that we want to be able to declare? Will we die in peace and in pride and saying, you know what? I fought the good fight. I did not waste a minute of my life being resentful, hateful, fearful. I lived with my heart open. And for someone like me in the kind of work that I do, I'm not going to lie, it is sometimes really, really hard for me, because when I open my heart and I deal with such toxic energy, there's an impact on me. But what I do is I remind myself that this isn't about me. This is God using me as a vessel to do his work, to make this planet, this age, this society, this generation better than when I came.
Amen to that. So with that being said, Jeanell, is there any final comment you want to make before we end this broadcast?
Never give up hope about anything. And as hard as life can get sometimes, I like to think that everything happens for a reason. Even the crappy, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of these moments? Like, to really find grace and faith. And I feel bad for, you know, I have clients who don't have faith. They don't believe in God. And I'm like, how's that even possible? Like, how do you sort out what life is about without knowing that you have a higher purpose and that there is someone out here who actually, you were chosen out of billions of sperm cells and an egg in this moment in time to come together, like the miracle of that happening. And now us being on this planet, doing what we're doing at this time of the ages, I think right now is an amazing time. Yeah, there's a lot of crappy things happening in the world. And at the same time, there was this moment yesterday where I was thinking about my 8-year-old niece. I was watching this documentary about climate change and just how the world is going. And there was this point where I was like, if the world goes to shit in a handbag, and let's say it happens when I'm in my 70s, and I'm probably like almost done my life, am I going to care about all of this? But then I remember, I'm like, but then there's my niece, my 8-year-old niece, who's going to be in her 30s and 40s and having to deal with the destruction of our planet. And she's going to have to live through this.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's really about, again, like, how do we set ourselves up to really make the most of what we have in this moment in time? whether it's the next 5 minutes we're on this planet, 5 years, 50 years, is just making every moment count. Because for me, when I die and I get to the pearly gates of heaven, and actually this is a defining moment for me. It was a moment where I pictured myself the pearly gates of heaven. And St. Peter says to me, Jeanell, what did you do with your life? When I did this replay at my age of 40, I was working in sales. And I was like, what would I say? I sold a bunch of stuff. I made a lot of money. I got on really cool trips. God's not going to care about that.
Right.
And so that was the moment that I chose. I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit corporate, and I'm going to do something that is me and made of love. And so the next question was like, okay, what does that look like? If I could use 100% of Jeanell's being, all of her experience, all of her love, her personality, and roll it up into a business, what would that look like that has integrity? And that's how I became a coach.
You did what I did in 2020 when I gave up in sales and insurance. I had a director's position, and I gave it all up. I gave up, 15 years of insurance. I've done other things too in corporate America, but insurance was one of those things I was really good at. So all of those trips and all that stuff you're talking about, I gave that all up because it's like, I was just making money.
Yeah.
That's all that was. I wasn't really doing anything meaningful. Yeah, I may have been impacting people's lives with some of the things I was doing, and I was really good at my job, and I had compassion, and I wasn't like the rest of these agents and like just lying my way just to make a sale. But at the end of the day, there's more to this. There's more to who we are, and we have to be one with that purpose to be truly fulfilled and to be worthy of God's graces. You know what I'm saying? So
that's what I had. And then I would say a couple months later, I was in a sleep, and I actually heard a voice say to me, Jeanell, you are a healer. And I remember waking up from this nap and being like, first of all, who was that? Second of all, of course I'm a healer. I don't know where the of course came from, but there was this almost like this inner knowing that that's who I am, even though I've never had any experience in it. And then so I went to my mom. I said, hey, Mom, I got this thing that told me I'm a healer. She's like, of course you are. And so to that point, I'm like, okay, well, she's like, yeah, you're a coach, so therefore you're a healer. And I'm like, no, Mom, I think I'm like supposed to be more than that. And so that is the path I'm on right now, is just checking in with my intuition, praying to God and going, Lord, guide me, show me the signs, bring the people to me that I'm meant to meet. And I just follow the cookie crumbs. That's all I'm doing, is I'm following the breadcrumbs and going where God leads me. And so those moments where business is slow, I have learned to just be okay with that. It's like, okay, God is coming up with he's cooking up something for me in the kitchen right now, and it's not ready yet, but I'm just going to sit here and be patient until it's ready. And until then, I'm just going to keep opening my heart and giving what I've got until I can't give anymore.
Well, let me tell you, may the Most High in Christ continue to bless you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the work that you're doing. So looking forward to having you come back.
Yeah, me too.
So to all the brothers and sisters, thank you for tuning into this, that you're going to be listening to this broadcast, and look forward to having Jeanell come back. So this is another installment of the Truth Seeker series. And we'll end it there. All right. I hope that everybody enjoyed that pretty extensive episode about ending generational trauma, how to deal with relationships, how to be committed to the people that we love or we say we love and care about, how to be better communicators, how to truly establish a relationship that is fulfilling, and how to definitely be honest with ourselves, right? Because that's the most important thing. We have to truly be honest with who we are as human beings and in this walk, and really taking responsibility for the reality that we live, right? It's very important. So, if you stuck around for this live broadcast up to this point, I want to thank you for tuning into the live broadcast. If you haven't already, for anybody that's new or hasn't done this yet, definitely subscribe and follow at networkofawareness.com. Leave your comments, concerns, any inquiries, anything you want to kind of listen to or have me talk about on the Network of Awareness. Share your thoughts, your ideas, and share your, whatever topics of discussion that you want on networkofawareness.com, as well as leave your likes and reviews on whether you listen on Apple or Spotify, or like us on Spreaker.com, and just continue to download the shows and support. A lot of great things coming. So with that being said, like I always say, when you live in the present, there is always an opportunity for a new beginning. And I'm going to do a series this week, probably tonight too. I'll probably do another show tonight and throughout the week, where I'm going to do an installment of several different episodes, all with the same title and topic of discussion, meaning that we be infinite possibilities. We are the infinite possibility of our great creator, the Most High, of that which is and always will be, the very creation of this universe, and that energy that's within us, that light, that force, right? May the force be with you, like in Star Wars. Allowing that force to take its course. I remember saying, follow the source that will put you on course to be your own boss. Don't get lost in the action of distraction, because those same attractions will close you in like captions. Don't get closed in. Be free to be that which you were meant to be. And don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up that tunnel and find the light within you so you can light up the darkness. This is all the information saying peace, love, and light.